Another area you can help in is with equipment. A movie projector. God has blessed us with a VCR movie projector we can use to go out into different areas. Video equipment for a Bible Institute. Needless to say, we're very promotive of using video with a Bible Institute for various reasons. Camp development. We have a camp out here that a brother missionary has developed that's been very beneficial. That's something they could never do. So that's something the missionary can help with. Rent for a new mission. A number of times I've put the money in to rent a building so they could start a ministry or develop a ministry in a particular area. By the grace of God, not all the time. Some just haven't gone. They've fallen flat. But that also is to be expected. You're going to have some failures. But by the grace of God, it's usually been effective. If it doesn't work, they do know that the missionary is there to help them in an area that they can't do it themselves. Then to acquire furniture, such as a pulpit and benches, so they can have services and not have to just sit on the floor. Also transportation. I've already mentioned that. In some areas, you're the only transportation they have to get out into the new areas. Siguiente título. Financial help for the nationals. This again is another polemical situation. First off, if you don't help them, they're going to think, how dwelleth the love of Christ in him? You know, if a brother seeth another brother with a need and shutteth up his bowels of compassion, how dwelleth the love of Christ in him? That's what they're going to think. That is going to be a natural tendency. At the same time, if you help them, be careful not to create an endless dependence. I have some personally, that I help as missionaries, just like I receive help from the United States. We have churches that have been supporting us since deputation, and most of our churches have been supporting us since deputation. That doesn't create a dependence depending on the man. If he's got a worthy ministry, he's going to be depending on the Lord, and you're just helping him. I'm not talking about his full support. I'm just talking about a missionary support. Giving him something a month, supporting him so much a month to help him with his ministry. You have to develop it in your own way. Determine the following. First, are you going to help? Are you willing to help? Some aren't. Who are you going to help? Not just anybody. By the grace of God, the men that we are presently helping, there aren't that many, they're doing a missionary work. They had already been in a missionary ministry. They had already been serving the Lord for a number of years. These are men that developed under our own ministry. They didn't come in from another ministry outside. So we're helping men developed under our ministry. There's a danger when you bring someone in from the outside. That doesn't mean it's always going to be a bad experience. We've got one man in the North Coast who's responsible for the 2 churches that have been started there. He was not saved and developed under our ministry, but he's been a real blessing to our ministry. He's become a part of our ministry, but we gave him a number of years before we felt comfortable getting involved with him in any way. He became a part of our ministry because of our first local church under the national pastor when they started supporting him under their mission program. And God has blessed that relationship, but you've got to be very careful about that. You've also got to be very careful that you're not seen as being someone who robs the sheep. How much help will you offer? Personally, I would suggest just a little bit of help to let them know you're encouraging them. Be careful of not giving them too much. You've got to moderate what percentage you're going to give them, how much you're going to give them. How long will the help last? Some of the missions have said, well, we're going to support a man for 5 years, full support for 1, and cut it back 20% a year until he gets down to where the national church is supporting him. Well, it might take 20 years for that church to be able to support him. What do you do in that case? Now, what about those pastors that come down to where only getting 40% of the total support, and they feel led of God to go to someplace else to where they can get back to the 100%? So that philosophy didn't work, but you're going to have to decide these in your own particular ministry for your own particular purpose. Warning, do not then treat the man as a hired help. He is God's servant. Siguiente título. Help as unto a fellow servant in God's vineyard. You don't want the churches in the States looking down their nose at you and telling you what to do as a hired servant, as if you were their slave and you're their paid worker. You wouldn't like that. The national doesn't like it any more than you do. Psychology about helping the pastors. They need to depend on their church. It should be leading in that direction when the man is a pastor of a church. If he's got a missionary heart and he's starting missions, he's out doing mission work, then he's in the same category as you are. He is a missionary, but you've got to be careful of determining the difference. The church needs to be responsible for their pastor. They won't mature as a church until they take their responsibility as a church with their own expenses, one of which is their national pastor. Just like a young man doesn't become mature until he has a family to support. The problem, you live comfortably. For example, he, a specific pastor, lives on 60% of what his basic needs are. The possible level of frustration between you and him, 40%. I'm sorry, you're going to have to live with that. I have for the last 30-some years. That's just one of the problems we have with being rich Americans versus poor nationals in a foreign country where the income is very low. In some countries, you might be the poor one compared to them. So that's a completely different situation. Siguiente título. Indigenous churches. All procedures and developmental methods must have as its goal the establishment of indigenous churches. Churches that are pastored by a national, that are supported by the nationals, that support their own pastor, and that are going out and starting churches. God is blessed. I've already mentioned the number of churches He's given us. I was personally involved in 3 of them. I started 2 of them, and the third one I started with just a few number of people that had already been saved. It had been going for about 4 weeks. All the rest have been developed by the nationals. As they've seen the vision, they've gotten the burden, they've gone out and made the contacts, and then they've developed the works that we've encouraged them and work with them on, but they've done it. This means independence from external domination. As I've said, very careful to stay away from a hierarchy. This means self-determination without outside influence. As I've already stated, our church properties are bought under our Baptist Mission of Honduras Incorporation papers. The reason? The cost. Our bylaws to state emphatically that no church will ever be under the mission as an ecclesiastical authority. The only relationship they have with the mission because of our incorporation papers is their property. And it is emphatically put there what they have to do to sell that church property. And they have their rights to do that within the bylaws. And it means there is no authority over them from the mission. No properties can be sold without written authorization by that congregation that the property be sold. We as a mission cannot sell that property without their authorization. The nationals and a general assembly must give formal approval of the transaction, which means all of the churches that are part of our mission know that they have a say and they're the final authority on whether a church property is going to be sold or not. So they know their church property is safe. We're not going to do anything to it unless they ask, unless they authorize, and then it can be accomplished within the bylaws. This independence also means the congregation recognizes its own individual value before God. God recognizes and values each congregation. Its individual responsibility primarily to God, not to the mission. That each member must then function within the body. So it goes from the mission, recognizing the independence of that church, and then that church recognizing the value of each individual member. Siguiente título. As in the U.S., inter-church cooperation must be cultivated. I'm here on the mission field. You will hopefully one day be a missionary or a pastor supporting missionaries. Your church is not going to underwrite the full support of a particular missionary. Very few missionaries are going to have that circumstance. Most of us are on the mission field because of the support of many churches that have the same convictions that we have. That same cooperation must be developed on the mission field. For a wider fellowship, nobody can live alone. We need fellowship. For mutual edification, we encourage each other in the Lord. For the greater degree of stability, I mean, you might have a congregation that's being influenced by the charismatic movement. Well, as you get together in fellowship, then the hope and prayer is that that can be stifled, it can be stymied, it can be stopped. For protection against false teachers and teachings getting into our congregations to where they go to that charismatic feeling. For joint efforts in evangelism, education, benevolence, and the training of workers. In some of our congregations in the capital city especially, the two pastors are teaching in the Bible Institute. One, for example, teaches a course on, for example, hermeneutics on Monday, and then he teaches hermeneutics on Tuesday in the other brother's church, and vice versa. The other pastor teaching the second course. One of the men out of the church has been through Bible Institute. He's a deacon. He's not a pastor, but he's teaching out in the countryside. He's teaching courses out there. So as they work together in the training of nationals, and this is the benefit of the Video Institute, Institute on Video, you can expand your outreach immensely through video because it's a support for the training of nationals. For future foreign missionary endeavors, as I've stated with respect to us American missionaries coming to the mission field. Siguiente titulo. Furlough. Furlough is necessary. It is necessary for the family, especially in your first few terms. It is emotional relief from the field pressures. There are a lot of pressures on the field. Foreign custom, as I said, foreign culture. You're in a fishbowl, as our mission teacher in seminary said to us. On the mission field, you're in a fishbowl. They watch everything you do. A time of spiritual renewal. When you first get to the field, you have a problem with language, you have a problem with custom, and so forth and so on. You're preaching 3 times a week, sometimes more. Sometimes you're teaching in a Bible Institute. You're giving out, you're giving out, you're giving out. You need to go back. You don't hear many words of encouragement. Everything seems to be uphill. Everything you do, you have to struggle to do. So you need to go back to the station, get that spiritual renewing as you go back and listen to the words preached in your own culture, in a local congregation, not on a tape, for example. Renewed cultural identifications. Remember where you're from. I'm originally from Boston. I'm married a Texan. Got saved in Texas, was trained in Texas, and haven't gone back to my home state for over 30 years, or 40 years almost, since I've been saved, since I joined the Air Force, really. One time I went back and identified with my own people in my own country and my own state, and realized, hey, this is what I am. This is how I grew up. I am what I am because of the first 18 years of my life that I lived in Massachusetts. It helped me at that particular point in my life. Well, it's the same thing. You leave the foreign field, you go back to the United States, you say, hey, I'm still an American. It encourages you. For the supporting churches, you go back, you report your successes, and you also get any needed increase for the ministry, because hopefully in the period of time you've had your ministry expand somewhat, the expenses have gone out. There are 2 problems. Reporting successes humbly. Look what I have done. My first furlough, I went and I was trying to be humble before the Lord and give Him the glory, and one lady in one of the churches said to me, a sweet Christian lady said, but you had to go. I thought, well, that's true, I had to go. Well, they want my humility, just blew it. Well, that just showed my humility was only skin deep at the time. You've got to be able to go back and report your successes in a humble way. And then another problem is to visit churches primarily for material benefit. I got to get some more support. That should not be your basic motivation. That is necessary. Let's face it, that's a driving factor of going all over the country back and forth to churches. But you should seek before the Lord to be a blessing to those people in what you want to do and what God has already done through you on the field as a result of their support. I had one man in one of the churches say to me, you know, you're different, Brother Phil. He said, many times a missionary comes in and his attitude, look how lucky you are that we've gone to the mission field in your place. And I try to develop, look how blessed I am that you've given me the privilege of going to represent you there. I was trying to project that, and I did, by God's grace, at least in that one church for that one man. We should be trying to project the Lord Jesus Christ as we're on furlough. I had the opportunity given a field report in our fellowship meeting a number of years ago, and I was trying to do it in such a way that would encourage the missionaries. At that particular point, we'd gone from 3 to 13 congregations in 3 years. Of course, we had been missionaries for 18 years at the time. Well, after I was finished with my devotion or my report, later on in the meeting, 2 or 3 missionaries come up to me and said, your report really encouraged me. I felt thrilled. I didn't have any pastors come up and say anything. That's okay. I had accomplished my objective. I had encouraged the missionaries, and I hadn't said, look at the great work God has done through me there in Honduras. I was just saying, look at the great work God can do through us if we'll let Him have the leadership. Furlough should be based on the Holy Spirit's guidance, considering the furlough time that's permitted by your mission, if you belong to a particular mission. The need of the family. When you have young children, there is a need of taking furlough. There is a need of going back to the States. The need of the work. When we were on our second term, I felt like we needed to stay longer than the 4 years that we're allowed to go on furlough, so we did. The financial needs, sometimes the financial needs. One of our missionaries went to the field, and one of his churches, his home church, supported him a big portion of his income. Well, they had problems within the church, and I don't remember all the details, but he lost most of that income. He had to cut his term short, go back to the States, and raise more support to make up for what he'd lost. So that is a very important factor. Advice, titulo. The missionary's major work is on the field, not visiting churches in the United States of America. Every time you leave, your work is set back. It'll take you 3 to 6 months, depending on if you're renting a house or not. Take you 3 months anyway to close down. You have to start with the items you really don't need, storing them. Then you have to go to the items that you do need, but you could get along without. And then you get down to the basic items. How long do you, and this is a process that's terrible. We went through it time and time again. It was always a headache. Where do you stop using? When do you stop using it? And so forth and so on. You go to the States for however long you're there on furlough, which it is a necessity, as I said. There is a need for furlough, and I've already mentioned that. I'm not talking about it's not a need. I'm just telling you the problem with it. Then you go to the States for a year. We had to go one time for 16 months. We'd taken a long second term. It was 9 years long, and I had some health problems, so we needed the time in the States for rest, recuperation, for some healing. It took 16 months. Well, beloved, by the time when I come back, it took me 6, 8, 9 months to get back into the ministry there on the field. The men had been used to doing things on their own, and I hadn't been there, so they'd live without me. Well, I wasn't going to just step back in and take over again. I was waiting for them to come in and tell me, Brother Phil, we need help with this, that, and the other. I felt that was the way it should be. That's how I ended up out here where we're at now. But every time you go to the States, it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to get back into things again, to where the people get used to you. And if you're constantly running back and forth to the States, your ministry is going to be adversely affected. They don't see any consistency. They don't see faithfulness. They see every time you want to leave, you do. So why should they go to church all the time? You're not faithful. So be very careful. Follow the Holy Spirit's leadership for furlough to your visits to the States. Siguiente titulo. Conclusion. The price of this work. What does it cost to be a missionary? A shortened life expectancy. They say the average missionary has a life expectancy 5 years less than the average American. I mentioned back problems. And that's the next thing, health problems. I mentioned the back problem I have. I've got a genetic problem on my back, and these bad roads over the years, driving over them with rough vehicles, have just put my back out. I've got a very serious back problem. Praise the Lord that for the fruit that's been given, but there are going to be health problems because you're on the mission field. The more primitive the country, the more backwards, the bigger the problem. You've got parasites. In some countries there's cholera, and just all kinds of problems you can have on the mission field. Is it worth it? If God's calling you, it will be worth it. Emotional trials as your patience is tried. As I've said here in the notes, to gain the conference requires years, not years, decades. It's a long-term battle. When we first come to the mission field, I realized after a number of years on the field, we Americans want things done yesterday. We're very impatient. Foreigners in most poor countries aren't used to things being done. There are promises made by their politicians, and they're not fulfilled. Year after year, decade after. I'm talking about basic needs. So, in Latin America anyway, their idea of getting things done is tomorrow. In Latin America, that might be 24 hours from now, that might be next year, that might be never. So here comes the missionary, impatient. He wants things done yesterday, and their lifestyle says, we'll get it done tomorrow. And then there are spiritual battles. You're on the front line. This is the price of the work. Satan is going to attack you personally, directly. The reward of the work, national pastors you won to Christ, and disciples in the ministry who in turn reproduce themselves as Christians and pastors. I'm thrilled, thrilled, thrilled We now have third, fourth, and fifth generation Christians in our ministry. People that have been won to Christ by the nationals themselves. And there are pastors who have won men who are now pastors that they have helped train, and even they have we've got a third generation, or actually fourth generation pastor in the ministry right now. And he is active and an effective teacher in the Bible Institute ministry in the capital city. My First Timothy, his First Timothy became his First Timothy, who is now producing other Timothy. That's the reward of the ministry on the mission field. Is the price worth it? I think it is. I'd do it again. I wouldn't want to do anything else. The methods, ultimo titulo, the methods described in this course are what God gave me personally. Me. This is my practical mission course, what God has done through me personally. E.M. Bounds wrote in his great book, God is not looking for better methods, he is looking for better men. You need to be the man God would have you to be, and then he will give you the method for your particular ministry on the mission field to which he has called you. All mission fields are not like Honduras. All mission fields are not like the city we're in. All ministries are not like mine. All ministers of the gospel, all missionaries are not like me. Every one of us are different. Find God's method for your ministry, and he'll make it fruitful. Seek to be a better man in Christ, and God will give you the best method for you, for your ministry, and for your specific people. I trust that this program, this teaching, what we've shared with you through this course, has been a blessing to you and will be a help in your ministry and give you fruit for the glory of Christ in some foreign country. God bless you. You have to terminar.